Trump thought it would be just another hearing, another chance to control the room with his usual bravado. But when Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett took the mic, calmly opened her folder, and locked eyes with him, everything shifted. "Mr. President, with all due respect, the truth doesn't need permission to speak." That line landed like a hammer blow. At 9 a.m., the House Oversight Committee chamber was packed. Every seat was taken. The press sat tense, cameras aimed. Viewers at home expected another round of partisan noise-talking points, finger-pointing, maybe a viral clip or two. But something about this morning felt heavier, like a storm building. Crockett had been yielded 5 minutes during a nationally televised hearing on election security. Trump, seated across the room in a rare in-person appearance, had already delivered his usual lines: voter fraud, stolen ballots, a rigged system. But he didn't expect what followed. Crockett didn't raise her voice. She didn't perform. Her tone was sharp, focused, and deliberate. She flipped open a folder, confirmed her time with the chair, and began. "Let's go on record. November 3rd, 2020, you said the election was stolen. That's your statement, sir." She read directly from a printed transcript. Trump didn't reply. He wasn't allowed to, but his posture shifted. His signature confidence twitched. Crockett turned the page. Then December 1st, 2020, your own Attorney General, Bill Barr, stated there was no evidence of widespread fraud. Behind her, a screen lit up. A clip of Barr's statement played. Trump stared ahead, jaw tight. She kept going. January 6th texts from your chief of staff urging calm, asking Fox News hosts to intervene. But on Truth Social, you wrote, "Fight like hell." That's not confusion. That's contradiction. The chamber had gone completely still. Even Republicans were silent now. Viewers at home were already reaching for their phones, screen recording, texting friends. "Turn on C-SPAN, right now." Then came the moment that froze the room. "Mr. President, with all due respect, the truth doesn't need permission to speak." Trump's jaw clenched. His breathing grew louder into the mic. He didn't like being challenged, not like this, not with quiet confidence, not with facts. He looked like he wanted to respond, but didn't dare interrupt. Crockett didn't blink. She didn't pause for effect. She turned the page and kept going. A murmur rippled from the right side of the chamber. Trump was visibly red-faced. He leaned toward an aide, whispered sharply, then slammed his palm on the table. The echo cut through the silence. Someone whispered, "Jesus." Still, Crockett didn't flinch. "I'm not here to win a soundbite. I'm here because people need facts, not fear. And if that makes you uncomfortable, that's not my burden." By 10 a.m., the clip was already everywhere. Hashtags exploded across social media. Hashtag Crockett v. Trump trended within the hour. A CNN producer tweeted, "We may have just witnessed the moment everything changed." Conservative media accused her of disrespect. Others claimed she had embarrassed the presidency. But Crockett hadn't thrown punches. She had exposed them. Then Trump stood abruptly, shoved back his chair, and muttered something that was faintly caught by a hot mic, something about it being a setup. He walked out. The door slammed behind him. The committee didn't recess. The chair, visibly stunned, leaned into the mic and said, "Let the record reflect that the president has exited the chamber voluntarily." But it didn't feel voluntary. Crockett didn't smirk. She didn't gloat. She simply closed her folder, leaned back in her chair, and exhaled. The tension didn't break. It deepened. Republicans avoided eye contact. The usual swagger had vanished. No one expected Trump to walk out. Not in front of the cameras, not in front of his base, not in front of Jasmine Crockett. C-SPAN cut to a wide shot. Crockett remained motionless. The internet, however, erupted by the time she left the Capitol that afternoon. Her name had been mentioned on national TV more than a dozen times. Her staff's phones were flooded. Campaign donors, civil rights leaders, voters and critics were all calling, texting, and reacting. But the message was already clear. Something seismic had happened, and the man who never backed down had just walked out-tauged, out-prepared, and absolutely outmatched. Reporters, supporters, critics, even threats it all hit at once. Outside the Capitol, a swarm of cameras had already staked out the steps, waiting for a dramatic soundbite. But Jasmine Crockett didn't give them one. "I said what needed to be said," she told the first reporter who pushed a mic toward her. "And I'll keep saying it no matter who's sitting across the table." Then she got in the car and left. Inside the White House, chaos erupted. According to a staffer who later leaked details to the Washington Sentinel, Trump stormed back from the Hill, slamming his fist onto the Resolute desk and shouting, "Why the hell didn't anyone prep me for that?" The fury didn't stop there. He turned on his communications team. One aide reminded him they had warned him about Crockett, her background as a civil rights attorney, her reputation for showing up with receipts. She was supposed to be a nobody. He screamed by the end of the day. He was threatening to fire 3 people: his communications director, press secretary, and even his personal aide. He wanted the story buried, but it was already too late. Back in Dallas, Jasmine's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Her father had left a voicemail. "You did good, baby, but keep your head on a swivel." She knew exactly what he meant. Moments like this don't pass quietly. Within 48 hours, several conservative PACs had launched online campaigns calling her a disgrace and demanding her censure. At the same time, progressive groups flooded her inbox with donations, mostly small amounts from everyday people who just wanted to say thank you. The headlines rolled in. Crockett breaks the seal. Politico, the moment Trump lost the room. MSNBC, unhinged exit. Trump storms out during live hearing. The Philadelphia Ledger, but the most unsettling shift didn't come from the media. It came from Trump's own base. Cracks began to show. Not many, but enough to make the political class nervous. A former Trump campaign strategist told a reporter, "You don't walk out like that. It makes you look weak, and weakness." His people don't forgive. Even more damaging, Republican members of the committee were caught on hot mics after the hearing. One leaned to another and said quietly, "She had him." That wasn't fluff. That was all real. The clip leaked. The damage was done suddenly. This wasn't just a viral moment. It was being recapped by anchors, referenced in classrooms, whispered about at dinner tables. Crockett and her team met late into the night, not to celebrate, but to prepare. Because when you swing at a former president and land it on live television, you don't relax. You brace whether the retaliation came through media spin, subpoenas, or worse. They had to be ready. Meanwhile, the internet was catching fire by the time her car cleared Capitol Hill. The clip of her exchange had crossed 10 million views across platforms. Twitter, still refusing to be called X in public, was ablaze. Crockett vs Trump #facts over fear #truthbomb. Even traditionally neutral political analysts admitted something had shifted. It wasn't just that she challenged Trump, it was how she did it. No theatrics, no grandstanding. Just hard evidence, delivered with surgical calm. People who usually avoided politics were sharing her video like it was the only thing that mattered. In a cafe in Des Moines, college students huddled around a phone, rewatching the line, "The truth doesn't need permission to speak." In Toledo, a construction worker was overheard saying, "Man, she didn't blink. Not once." TikTok lit up with reaction videos, stitches, and comments like, "This is what courage looks like." Cable news scrambled to catch up. MSNBC had A panel assembled within the hour. CNN ran a breaking chyron. Crockett confrontation dominates hearing. Fox News pivoted the other direction, calling her disrespectful and labeling her a radical leftist trying to humiliate the president. The split-screen coverage only made the moment bigger. It wasn't just politics anymore. It was the story. And while the country debated, Trump said nothing. No tweets, no Truth Social posts. No calls to his usual allies. Silence for a man who thrives on owning the narrative. The quiet was deafening. People started asking why. Inside the West Wing, aides scrambled to draft a response. One insider said privately he wanted to post something nasty. But every version made him sound like he was spiraling. We couldn't stop him from yelling in private, but in public, the silence said it all. They convinced him to stay off social media for now. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett's team was reeling. They hadn't expected it to explode this fast. Her communications director, Alana Briggs-Sharp, exhausted 30-something, was juggling non-stop calls. "We've got The View asking for an interview," she told Jasmine on a late-night strategy call. "Good Morning America, too. And Netflix producers. No clue what they want, but they're asking." Jasmine wasn't chasing headlines. She wasn't trying to go viral. She just wanted the public to hear the facts. Still, she understood what was happening. "We can't run from this," she told her team. "If the whole country's watching, we need to show them why this matters." And she meant it. While Crockett kept her focus, Trump's political machine kicked into overdrive. By 10 p.m. that night, a rushed segment aired on a conservative network. A commentator accused Crockett of spreading misinformation, but never clarified what was false. Instead, they hammered the same line. She disrespected the president. Social media wasn't having it. Viewers immediately clipped the segment, overlaying captions like, "Where's the lie?" She read his own words. The divide deepened. Then, things got worse. A behind-the-scenes video from the hearing leaked. It showed Trump slamming the desk as Crockett rapped her remarks. The sound cracked like a gunshot. Online reactions exploded. He couldn't handle the truth. By morning, it wasn't just Twitter anymore. Late-night TV joined in. Stephen Colbert joked. Trump didn't walk out, he waddled. Jimmy Fallon, usually cautious, said Crockett gave a masterclass in staying cool when the other guy's losing his mind. The moment was everywhere. Crockett's Dallas office was overwhelmed. Some calls were disturbing threats, but most were messages of gratitude. A retired teacher in Arizona left a voicemail. "I never thought I'd see someone look him in." The eye and say what we've all been yelling at our TVs. But not everyone called her a hero. A senior White House official, speaking to reporters off the record, hinted that Trump was considering repercussions for her behavior. "We don't let people grandstand on the presidency," they said. To Jasmine, it sounded more like a warning. But the real explosion came later that night, at 11:17 p.m. Little-known political blog out of Sacramento published a headline. Trump screamed at staff through folder at wall after Crockett hearing. It might have gone unnoticed till a senior White House correspondent from the Washington Sentinel quote-tweeted the story with one word. Confirmed. That's when everything cracked open. Sources inside the West Wing, names withheld, as always, painted a chaotic scene. From the moment Trump returned from Capitol Hill, his mood was beyond volatile. He didn't take off his coat. He didn't crack jokes. He stormed straight into the Oval Office and slammed the door. Then came the shouting. He reportedly demanded to know who let that woman speak. Someone tried to explain that Crockett's time was protected under committee rules. He wasn't interested. She should have been stopped, he snapped. Why wasn't anyone fact-checking her in real time? An advisor pointed out that congressional hearings don't work like that. That only made it worse. That's when it happened. He picked up a bright red folder from the resolute desk and hurled it against the wall. It burst open, papers scattering across the floor. No one moved, an intern restocking the coffee machine. Outside said she thought someone had been hit. They hadn't, but the fear was real. One senior-cum staffer cautiously suggested drafting a written statement to push back on Crockett's claims gently. Wrong move. She made you look like a fool, and you want to be gentle. Trump shouted, "Get the hell out." That staffer resigned the next morning. Back at the White House, panic set in. Staff were ordered to avoid reporters. Drafted statements were rejected over and over. Trump wanted fire. His team offered spin. Nothing was good enough. Behind closed doors, aides admitted they hadn't seen him this unhinged since January 6th. And through it all, Jasmine Crockett remained silent. Her team released a short press statement thanking constituents for their support and reaffirming her commitment to transparency. No interviews, no victory laps. No gloating. That silence only amplified the media attention. Conservative lawmakers scrambled to show loyalty. Senator Rick Barlow of Arkansas went on Fox News and called her an embarrassment to the institution. A House member from Florida said she had crossed a line, but the moment had already moved beyond spin. The facts were out. The reaction was real. And Trump, for once, wasn't in control of the narrative. Some lawmakers floated the idea of a formal censure hearing, but the energy behind it felt disorganized, more like panic than power. And this time, the public wasn't fully buying it. There was something about Jasmine Crockett's calm that stuck. Then came the second Oval Office leak, and it was worse. According to the Ledger Post, Trump had privately instructed his advisors to run a full background check on Jasmine Crockett. "Find out who's funding her," he allegedly said. "No one hits me like that without help." That line landed like a bomb. It wasn't just hostilely sounded retaliatory. And it immediately raised legal red flags. A sitting president using government resources to investigate a sitting member of Congress. That crossed into dangerous territory. The White House dismissed the report as completely fabricated. But insiders held their ground. He said it, one aide told reporters. "We were there." Back in Dallas, Crockett met with her legal counsel. They told her what she already suspected: Trump was trying to intimidate her. He wasn't going to stop now. She didn't flinch. "I'm not scared of bullies," she told her chief of staff. "But I am ready for them." That night, she posted a brief message on Instagram stories: "When the truth makes them angry, you're probably on the right track." It got over 1 million views in 2 hours. Inside the White House, Trump was still spiraling. He wanted cameras. He wanted a rally. He wanted to feel in control again. His team scrambled to organize a surprise appearance in Mobile, Alabama's someplace friendly, someplace loyal. But while Trump plotted a comeback, the media was closing in on something bigger. The next morning, politics in Washington ground to a halt. Nobody was talking about inflation, foreign policy, or infrastructure. It was all about the hearing about Crockett, Trump, and what came next. Then came the footage no one expected. C-SPAN released unedited video from the hearing, including camera angles that hadn't aired live. One in particular stood out: a slow zoom on Trump's face as Crockett laid out his contradictions. You could see it, all the clenched jaw, the darting eyes, the white-knuckle grip on the desk. For a man who built his persona on strength and dominance, it was brutal. Frame by frame, his composure cracked, spread fast. People weren't just quoting Crockett anymore, they were studying Trump's silence. CNN aired a full breakdown called The Anatomy of an Implosion. MSNBC went with the power of composure. Even The Guardian headlined, "How a Texas Congresswoman Broke the President's Armor Live." Right-wing pundits tried to punch back. Conspiracy theories bloomed claims that the footage was doctored, that Crockett had been coached by deep state operatives. Some commentators mocked her voice, her hair, her posture, anything to steer the conversation away from the content. But there was no scandal to weaponize. No gaffe, no misstep. She had shown up ready. That night, Fox News hosted a panel, 3 loyalists and 1 moderate. The loyalists called her manipulative, performative, and a disgrace. But the moderate cut through the noise. She used facts, he said. If that's a new low, we're in real trouble. Online, the lines were drawn. Hashtag Crockett4. Truth. Hashtag mad at facts. Hashtag truth. DOESN. Single quotes T. Need permission. Memes exploded. One showed Trump sweating while Crockett calmly sipped coffee. Another turned her now famous line into a t-shirt. The truth doesn't need permission. But beyond the memes, something deeper was happening. Moderate voters started paying attention. In places like Scranton and Green Bay, local papers began running interviews with voters who rarely made headlines. A woman, lifelong Republican, told one outlet, "I didn't like the way she talked to him, but she was right." And that was the part that scared Trump's team the most. At a closed-door GOP strategy meeting, new internal polling showed a 4-point drop in independent support in key swing states. The cause? A viral moment was landing with voters who usually tuned politics out. It wasn't just Democrats who were energized. It was people tired of chaos, tired of spin, tired of noise. Some Republicans tried to distance themselves, not publicly, but in silence. Members who were in the hearing room that day declined interviews. They don't want to be asked if they agree with her, one aide told Politico. Answers complicated. Crockett, meanwhile, was flooded with media requests. Her team declined almost all of them except one. They accepted an invitation from PBS NewsHour. No flashy graphics. No overproduced sound bites. Just a quiet studio, a calm tone, and Crockett's voice. She didn't gloat. She didn't relitigate. It wasn't about taking him down, she said. It was about truth. If we can't hold the highest office accountable with evidence, then we've already lost something. That interview landed harder than any headline. Even Democrats who had once dismissed her as a rookie were changing their tune. She came in with facts, composure, and no gimmicks. One senior member said privately, "And she left a mark no one can spin away." That terrified them more than shouting ever could. But not everyone was clapping. A group of conservative lawmakers sent a formal complaint to the House Ethics Committee, accusing Jasmine Crockett of violating standards of decorum. It was toothless-y. Symbolic jab more than a real threat, but it was still a move. Crockett didn't flinch. That evening, she sat on the couch in sweatpants beside her sister, who'd flown in from San Antonio. The TV was off. Her phone buzzed non-stop, but she ignored it. They shared takeout and silence. "You know this isn't over, right?" her sister asked. Jasmine nodded. "It never is. But now they know I'm not afraid of the stage." While the political class scrambled to contain the fallout, another surprise was already brewing, one neither Crockett nor Trump saw coming. The clip hadn't just gone viral, it had stuck. And that's what made it dangerous for Trump. His inner circle and the image he'd spent years curating. He wasn't used to being silent this long. But every attempt at response tweets, press releases, offhand remarks fell flat. Torn apart online, dismissed in headlines, or worse, ignored. Inside the West Wing, tension bled into everything. Briefings became minefields. He'd go off script mid-sentence, circle back, then lose the thread entirely. Staffers shared nervous glances while reporters scribbled down quotes they knew would dominate the next day's cycle. Then came the first serious crack from inside his own party. It was subtle, a leak to the American Tribune, a conservative-leaning but respected outlet. A senior Republican senator, unnamed, reportedly said he lost control of the room. And he lost control of the narrative. That's dangerous for all of us. The quote exploded not because of what it said, but because of who it came from. Conservative media usually rallied fast. This time, there were pauses, whispers, doubt. Donors noticed too. Some quietly froze their contributions. Others held back, waiting to see how deep the damage would run. Trump could feel it. The loyalty that once arrived on cue was suddenly delayed, and when that loyalty wavers, he unravels. At a closed-door donor retreat in Scottsdale, he tried to brush it off, mocking Crockett in front of a group of billionaires. "She's a nobody, just angry, just noise," he said. But not all of them laughed. One oil executive from Tulsa reportedly canceled his next check within 48 hours. Too risky, he told his advisor. Too unstable. Meanwhile, the White House scrambled to regain control of the story. A new angle began circulating through fringe outlets, claims that Crockett was backed by foreign interests. The accusation was flimsy, poorly sourced, and immediately debunked by fact-checkers. But it had a purpose: muddy the waters, distract, smear. It didn't work. Why? Because the moment that sparked all of this wasn't manufactured. It was deliberate, measured, surgical. There were no gaps to exploit, no falsehoods to spin. People had watched it live, rewatched it, shared it, with their kids and coworkers. It wasn't a rumor. It was a reckoning. Then came another blow. A former Trump aide, speaking anonymously to the Sentinel, admitted what many already suspected. He's not mad that she lied. He's mad that she used his own words against him. That's why it stings. And sting it did. In congressional hallways, speculation bubbled. Was this just a media flare-up, or the beginning of something bigger? Could 5 minutes from one first-term Congresswoman ripple that far? Then something strange happened. In swing districts across the country, Flagstaff, Kenosha, small but noticeable bumps showed up in local polls. Favorability ratings for Crockett were rising, not by landslides, but enough for GOP operatives to take notice. One senior advisor inside Trump's team was reportedly overheard during a strategy call. "This isn't about Jasmine anymore. It's about control, and we're losing it." Through it all, Crockett said nothing. No victory lap, no viral live streams, no podcast circuit. She showed up, did her job, attended committee meetings, spoke with constituents. The restraint made her moment resonate even more. At a modest community gathering in Fort Worth, she addressed a small group of teachers and union leaders. She didn't mention Trump once. She talked about truth, about accountability, about how leadership isn't about being the loudest voice. In the room, it's about knowing when to speak and when to listen. A clip from the event circulated later. In it, she said, "You can't lead people you're trying to scare. And you can't hide behind lies forever." Eventually, the truth shows up with receipts. The crowd didn't cheer. They just nodded. And somehow, that hit harder. Back in D.C., Trump's team was still scrambling to find a distraction big enough to pull attention away. Whispers circulated maybe a foreign policy move, an executive order, even a full cabinet shakeup, but nothing stuck. Because nobody had forgotten the clip. For the first time in his presidency, Trump wasn't the one driving the news cycle. And while he searched for a reset, his allies were already plotting something far more familiar and far more dangerous. Revenge. By week's end, Jasmine Crockett's name had appeared in more conservative media headlines than any Democrat. In office, including the vice president, but it wasn't coverage. It was a campaign. The gloves had come off. Right-wing influencers flooded their channels with thumbnails smearing her image. Unhinged, disrespectful, radical, anonymous blogs resurfaced fragments from her early civil rights cases, twisting them to frame her as anti-Pallies. Local outlets in Texas came under pressure from partisan donors, urging them to ask tougher questions when covering her work. Then came the fabrications. One headline claimed she received secret funding from a Soros-backed PAC. Another accused her of falsifying her legal credentials. All of it was debunked within hours, but the damage was in the accusation, not the correction. Crockett knew exactly what it was, a coordinated hit job dressed as public outrage. But understanding it didn't make it any easier to live through. Her inbox filled with hate. Messages like, "Watch your back," and "You're the reason." This country's broken. She had dealt with vitriol before. Every outspoken black woman in politics had. But this was different. It felt colder, more organized. Less like trolls, more like a machine. Her team urged her to consider added security. At first, she refused. "If I walk into church with a guy in sunglasses, I'm done," she told her chief of staff. "They'll say I'm scared. I'm not." But when her niece's school got a call asking if the Congresswoman's family was protected, she relented. It wasn't about fear, it was about responsibility. That night, behind closed blinds at her Dallas office, her team gathered to make a call. Would she push back, go on the defensive, set the record straight, or stay the course? Carla Woods, her campaign advisor, laid it out plainly. The people attacking you aren't looking for the truth. They're trying to knock you off balance, make you second-guess what you already know is solid. Jasmine looked around the room, tired but steady. "Then let's not flinch," she said. "Let's make it real quiet, just work." But the backlash wasn't limited to strangers. Colleagues who had texted "nice job" after the hearing were now silent. Not hostile, just absent. No follow-ups, no public support. It was a reminder. In Washington, courage has a shelf life, and loyalty is always conditional. Still, not everyone disappeared. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley went on air the next morning. Jasmine Crockett told the truth. Period. And if that truth makes you uncomfortable, maybe it's time to ask yourself why. Senator Robin Holt published an op-ed, "Composure should never be punished, and the truth should never be political." Letters poured in. Real ones, handwritten, from retired postal workers in Ohio, black pastors in Alabama, high school civics teachers in Nebraska. One note from a 14-year-old in Reno read, "I don't like politics, but when I saw you talk, I felt proud. Not of a side, just of someone telling the truth." She taped that one inside her notebook. But the louder the public support grew, the quieter the White House got. No retraction, no apology. No comment on the Oval Office leaks. Reporters were met with silence, deflections, or flat-out stonewalling. Insiders knew the truth. Trump hadn't moved on. He didn't see Jasmine Crockett as a moment. He saw her as a threat, not because she humiliated him, but because she didn't lose herself while doing it. And now, revenge was becoming policy. Conservative super PACs began funneling money into negative ad campaigns targeting her district. Shadow donors pumped funding into local races to build pressure from the ground up. When a community center she supported was suddenly hit with an IRS audit, it raised more than eyebrows. Crockett said nothing publicly, but she could feel the tension building. At Sunday dinner with her mother and sister, the conversation finally turned personal. Her mother, a retired nurse, set down her fork and looked across the table. "You sure this is worth it?" Jasmine didn't answer right away. She poked at her food, thinking. Then she looked up. "Mom," Jasmine said quietly, pushing her plate aside. "When I was little, you told me the hardest job in the world was telling people what they don't want to hear." She paused, her voice steady. "I didn't get it then. I do now." Her sister reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You were born for this, Jay. But even as Jasmine stood firm under pressure, something was building outside of Washington, something louder, more unpredictable, and far more powerful. Than any press release, the American public was starting to speak. No one expected a congressional hearing to spark a movement. But across the country, something was shifting. People who didn't watch C-SPAN, who usually tuned politics out, were suddenly talking about Jasmine Crockett, not because she shouted, not because she went viral, but because she said something that felt real. And she said it without the flash, without the show. A cashier in Spokane told a local reporter she didn't try to go viral. She just stood there and told the truth. That's rare. That's real. A welder in Gary, Indiana shrugged and said, I don't even like politics. But that lady, she had her facts straight. You could tell. In a retirement home in Macon, Georgia, a group of veterans watched the clip 3 times in one sitting. One of them finally muttered, "Took guts to do that." He's not used to being challenged by someone like her. What started as a viral moment had turned into something organic, something harder to dismiss. In Omaha, a muralist painted her. Quote, "The truth doesn't need permission to speak on the side of a laundromat." In El Paso, a high school government teacher used the hearing as a class discussion. When is telling the truth risky, and why do people fear it? Jasmine hadn't asked for any of it, but it kept growing. Her approval ratings surged at home, but what surprised her team were the letters and donations coming in from out of state, Montana, Idaho, even Utah. Small dollar gifts, quiet notes. One simply read, "I saw you. I believe you. Keep going." But every wave of support brought a wave of resistance. In Tulsa, a far-right protest group marched with signs reading "Radical Left Liar." Even though Jasmine wasn't anywhere near the event, logic didn't matter, only pressure. Online, bot accounts began pumping out doctored images of her. From the hearing, in one, her eyes glowed red with the caption, "Enemy of Truth." But the smear campaign backfired. The more they attacked, the more people leaned in. Crockett wasn't just a congresswoman anymore. She was becoming a symbol of something bigger, standing your ground without raising your voice. Reporters began hitting the road. In Charleston, West Virginia, a journalist asked a farmers market crowd if the clip had changed their view of the president. One man, a former Trump voter, didn't hesitate. "Look," he said, "I believed him for a long time, but she had the receipts, and he didn't say a damn word." That says something. It said a lot. Party strategists were rattled. Quietly, behind the scenes, they were watching polls shift. In swing districts, undecideds were softening. Not flipping, but listening. Then came the poll that changed everything. A new national survey asked respondents to name one politician they trusted even if they didn't agree with them. Jasmine Crockett ranked in the top 5. Above her, a few long-tenured senators and an independent from Maine. Below her, household names who'd been in Washington longer than she'd been. Out of law school. Consultants were stunned, but Jasmine, unmoved. She still hadn't appeared on any major network. She turned down podcast offers, refused a book deal worth 7 figures. Not selling the moment, she told her team. "I lived it. That's enough." But not everyone in her own party was thrilled. Behind closed doors, the whispers began. Is she getting too big, too fast? Is she going to jump the line? In politics, even your allies grow cautious when the spotlight shines too bright. Jasmine didn't seem to notice or care. During a quiet town hall in Lubbock, she stood in a church basement in front of 60 folding chairs. No cameras, no sound crew, just her and the people. They talked about housing, about broadband access, about what DC was forgetting. Toward the end, a woman in the back raised her hand and said, "You're the only one I've seen in years who actually looked him in the eye." Jasmine smiled. and I'd do it again. But back in Washington, something was stirring. The committee wasn't done. A second hearing had just been scheduled. The second hearing wasn't announced with fanfare. No press conference, no primetime teaser. Just a plain, no-frills statement posted quietly to the Oversight Committee's official site on a Tuesday morning in light of renewed public interest. And unresolved inquiries, the Oversight Committee has scheduled a second hearing on election integrity. All relevant parties are invited to attend. It was bureaucratic language, but anyone in Washington could read between the lines. This wasn't over. Jasmine's team saw the announcement before the media picked it up. Her communications director, Alana, stared at the screen for a moment, then looked over. They're expecting fireworks again. Jasmine leaned back, arms folded. "Let them," she said. "I'm just bringing facts." But this time, the tone had shifted. The setup was tighter. Security was more visible. The witness list was carefully curated. And Trump. Absent, there was no explanation. No formal excuse, just a line from his office citing scheduling conflicts. Everyone knew better. After the spectacle of the first hearing and the fallout that followed, his team wasn't about to risk another live implosion. Instead, three staunch allies were sent in his place, all familiar faces to cable news. All polished in the art of evasion. Still, Jasmine didn't blink. As the hearing approached, the media buzzed. Op-eds flooded the internet, some accusing the committee of stoking division, others praising them for refusing to let truth get steamrolled. Cable networks launched countdowns. Hashtags reignited. The morning of the hearing, Jasmine arrived. Early, no flashy outfit, no designer label. Just a navy blazer, black slacks, and her hair pulled back. Her face was calm, her walk steady. She greeted staff, reviewed her notes, and waited when she stepped into the chamber. It was already humming, reporters, interns, aides, and committee members all tuned to the same frequency. Tension, the witnesses came in hot. One insisted election. Fraud was widespread. Another cited dubious data pulled from an unverifiable website. A third attacked mail-in voting, accusing it of destroying democracy. Jasmine didn't react. She listened, took notes, occasionally tilted her head, but said nothing. Not yet. Then, Chairman Goubert gave her the floor. She didn't start with a counterattack. She started with a name. Mrs. Dana Hightower, age 76, Marietta, Georgia. Voted for the first time in 28 years. 2 weeks later, she received a letter threatening that her vote would be investigated. She let the silence fill the room. There was no investigation, just intimidation. Then came another, James Ellery, a former Marine who voted by mail from a VA hospital in Minnesota. His ballot was counted. His vote was real. And yet his name appeared on a list of suspicious voters, a list cited by this very committee. Pulled from a political blog, more stories followed. Dozens, each backed by documentation, affidavits, and public records. No flash, no theatrics. Just cold, precise storytelling, and then for the first time her voice caught. She was recounting a woman from Baton Rouge whose husband died of COVID 3 days before the election. She submitted both their ballots. His had arrived early. Then came the accusations, voter fraud, and investigation. She was cleared, but the grief and the shame lingered. Jasmine paused. "I'm not up here to win," she said quietly. "I'm here for the people who don't have microphones, who don't have staff, who don't have cameras. They just wanted to be counted, and they got dragged through the mud for it." She looked up, steady again. "I didn't come for drama. I came to protect the one right that makes all the others possible." It wasn't the kind of clip that explodes on the internet. It wasn't made for memes, but in the room there was a stillness, not out of boredom, out of respect. Some Republican members shifted awkwardly in their seats. Others looked down at their notes. One even murmured, "Thank you," under his breath. When a reporter asked her later why she'd gotten emotional, she shook her head. That wasn't emotion. That was honesty. Outside the chamber, something was already building. No viral frenzy this time. No trending hashtags, just a quiet current, stronger. Deeper clips of her closing statement began making their way online. Slowly, deliberately, and people were listening. The reaction to Jasmine Crockett's second hearing wasn't fast, it was felt. Heavier, more personal. People didn't just share her words, they sat with them. They let them echo. A mother in Akron posted the clip to Facebook with a quiet caption, "This is what I want my daughters to see. A woman who speaks the truth even when it costs her." In Spokane, a Vietnam veteran wrote, "I fought for this country. I don't care what side you're on." She honored the truth today. In high schools across the country, teachers paused their lesson plans to play her testimony in civics classes. Not because of political allegiance, but because of her poise, her presence, and her principle. The headlines shifted. No longer centered on outrage or spectacle. Now they were about character. Crockett raises standard for public discourse. The Philadelphia Record, truth over noise. The Congresswoman who refused to fold Austin Register, no drama, just truth. St. Louis Herald, and from the White House. Still silence. No tweet, no press statement. No surrogate pushback. There was no counter-narrative to spin, no insult to throw that didn't sound small in comparison. Apsky, the official line, no comment. But behind closed doors, the damage was clear. A senior advisor, according to White House sources, told colleagues he lost this one. There's no way to spin it. She outclassed him. Trump didn't even mention her name in meetings that week. But his anger hadn't gone it, had shifted. Redirected at his aides, at the media, at the silence around him that refused to bend. And that silence said more than any tirade could. Meanwhile, Jasmine returned home. No fanfare, no press blitz. No interviews. Just back to the work she'd always done, meeting with organizers, checking on small businesses, visiting classrooms, walking neighborhoods. At a community cookout in Garland, a woman pulled her aside, half smiling. "I didn't think they'd let you get away with it." Jasmine laughed gently. "I didn't either," she replied, then paused. "But maybe. We're finally remembering what public service is supposed to look like." Because the lesson wasn't about volume, it was about backbone. It was about people willing to be uncomfortable, willing to risk something real so that someone else could be heard. It's never easy. It's not supposed to be. But the moment you let fear dictate your truth, you hand power to the very people who thrive on confusion and silence. Jasmine didn't win by being louder. She won because she didn't need to be. And across the country, that realization quietly took hold. In coffee shops, barber shops, church basements, classrooms, dinner tables. Not about parties, but about leadership. The kind we say we want. The kind we've stopped demanding. In the weeks that followed, her office received over 30,000 emails. Some were hateful. Many were hopeful. But one stood out. From a 12-year-old girl in Spokane. "Hi. I don't understand everything you said, but I felt it. Thank you." That message was printed, framed, and hung in Jasmine's office. She never responded to the president, never dragged him online, never claimed victory. She just kept doing her job quietly, fiercely, with her eyes fixed forward. Because truth isn't just about moments, it's about momentum. And whether Washington likes it or not, that momentum now has a face, a voice, a name. And they'll never forget it. If this story made you feel something, anything, share it. Remind someone that leadership isn't about who shouts loudest. It's about who stands firm when everyone else flinches. Subscribe for more stories that don't just inform, they matter.